Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Breaking Uneven podcast. We love to talk shop, uncover the beauty of failures, and play a few games. Today, we have with us the co founder of Mana, James Lowe. After graduating from LSE, James was a strategy consultant at McKinsey and then joined SoftBank Vision Fund in growth and transformation. He is now the co founder and CEO of Mana. Have you missed anything noteworthy from your journey so far?
Nope, it's all good. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Perfect. So now to get started, let's play a quick game to understand more about Mana.
All right. So Twitter is known for its 280 character limit in every tweet, which sometimes makes it kind of difficult to convey your thoughts. So we measured it takes about 20 seconds to speak 280 characters. And so we transfer this challenge to you to explain to us Mana in 20 seconds, but we won't make it so easy. You also have to use one emoji and one hashtag in your tweet,
Got it. Got it. Okay.
right? So
I
whenever
will
you're
try.
ready, I will
Okay.
start your timer,
Cool.
right? So
Mana
three,
is the
oops.
Mana is the hashtag TikTok for learning. You browse a personal feed of learning content, then dive deeper with live streams and one-to-one classes. And is there that little emoji? Like this one?
Yeah,
Yeah, like that. That's basically the tweet.
awesome. 10 seconds. That's amazing.
Wow.
Are you
Hoping someone explains what we do.
Yeah, that was a great short description of what mana is. We will definitely delve deeper into it throughout our conversation. But before we get to mana, as someone in the corporate world, I'm keen to understand your thought process when it came to quitting your job at SoftBank and becoming an entrepreneur. And according to you, when would be like the so-called right time to make the switch?
Hmm. Yeah, it's very difficult to decide on the right time. For me, it was basically a combination of a few things. So, one is that I think I finally found a problem that I was passionate enough about that I could feel like I would work on it for 50 years and still not get tired about it. And critically, it wasn't the solution; it was really the problem. And I felt like the solution is likely to change, 10 times, 20 times in the lifetime of a company, especially in those early stages when you're iterating very quickly. So it's quite critical that the problem is really where your passion lies. Um, the second is that I felt like I could actually, with the relationships I built at that time, actually start approaching, initial users effectively to understand their pain points and actually try building around them. And so that was another key piece because in my head I was like, okay, I might be very passionate about climate change, but I know nothing about any of the people who are experiencing these pain points. That'd be really, really hard for me to build anything. Whereas in this particular learning problem, everyone around me, my friends, people I was coaching at the time or mentoring at the time, all of these people were part of the same problem space. And so it became quite easy to approach users for that. Um, the third piece was a more stable financial piece, which is that I kind of promised myself I need to get at least 2 years in savings so that I could pay both my bills and my parents' bills for 2 years, so that I could really take a financial risk. And so there's always a chance, of course, that I can't raise any money, or even if I did raise money, maybe my personal salary is going to be very low and all kind of stuff, right? So I needed enough of a runway to really make sure that I'm not going to be taking a gigantic personal risk to the extent that it risks my family and everyone's income associated with that. Um, so those three things were pretty critical. And then I think, outside of that and trying to decide what to do, there were much more auxiliary things, right? So it was like, have we found the right co-founder at that moment? Right? Do I feel like it's the right timing in the market? Do we feel like investors are going to invest in this stuff and so on and so forth? And I did have lots of those thoughts around that time. But I think in retrospect, as I think back, those were pretty unpredictable and difficult things. Like you won't really get an answer to those things. Like you won't get a sort of magic moment where you go, oh, this is the moment. Like if I start a company right now, I'm going to raise 10 million in pre-seed and, the whole market is looking at this and so on and so forth. And guessing momentum is almost always a bad idea because you can ride the momentum at the beginning, but by the time you actually start building the product, the momentum might have already gone. And so in retrospect, I think really what's most important is a problem that you're really passionate about. The ability to access early users so that you can actually really deeply understand the pain points and have a unique insight. and then having, in my case, a little bit more financial stability to really go pursue the risk.
The 3 points you stated makes it more clear, and it's a summarized version. I think it's also more quantifiable. Making decisions like this is always really difficult. So I think the way that you've like put it together and summarized it is really well. And I guess how did you satisfy like these 3 points?
Yeah. So in terms of the problem space, learning had been something that I was really passionate about since pretty much day one. And so I started a sort of social charity to train students in debating, and then later trained them to university when I was 16. And even then, it was a very core part of me. I felt like, what really sort of woke me up in the morning and still wakes me up at night, that kind of thing. It was really, how do we empower people to, in some ways, do what they love and achieve social mobility with it. And so that's always been a pretty strong driving force for me. I think what particularly changed in 2020 was this realization that the technology infrastructure had got to a point where it's possible to truly democratize education at scale. So I think my frustrations before, for the last like maybe 10 years before that, was really that I couldn't find any solution where there was both a business model and the technology infrastructure and the right combination of consumer incentive to scale education. And everything I worked on before were mostly nonprofits, whether it's training people in debating, or later when I was a generation, training people into unemployed youth into jobs. All of those things were incredibly impactful. They had like a lot of depth of impact of getting people into university, getting them into a job, but it was really, really difficult to scale. And so in 2020, I think it was a right combination of my motivations still remaining intact, and also the technology infrastructure and obviously COVID sort of bringing all of this together. And then on that second criteria of, can I access users? I think from, since I first started my career, I think when I was still at McKinsey and all that kind of stuff, I'd already been sort of regularly mentoring people, whether that's university students, or sometimes I'll be high school students thinking about their long-term future. Sometimes it might even be people of a similar age who are thinking about switching careers and stuff like that. And so I've been doing that very regularly on the side. So I kind of realized actually the people I was mentoring was literally the audience. And so it's quite easy to talk to them and understand their pain points and so on. And then what we actually did when we first started the company too was we went on Reddit and just found as many students as we could and just tried to talk to them about their pain points as well. And so in many ways that felt very easily accessible, partly because of what I was doing before. And on that final piece of financial stability, and that was purely luck over the last few years, where I was working in very high earning jobs, and so it gave me a degree of financial stability. And by that point, I was like, okay, I'm probably ready to do this. And it was like 9 months in lockdown, so I basically wasn't really spending any money. I was just cooking all day at home. And so it actually made it much easier and probably a little faster to make that decision as well.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think it's quite the checklist that you have, right? It's very measurable, very let's say tangible, right? So it's quite cool to have something that concrete to sort of let's say strive towards, and then because as you said, there's no like right moment, but you can actually identify a good period wherein you are satisfying a lot of these three things, right? So that's something quite cool that you have there. But speaking about that pre-seed round and 1.5 million pounds, right? Is that a number that you had in mind? Is that a 1 year, 2 year runway, or is that something that was the vibe you got from the people that you were approaching? What was your journey with that pre-seed?
Yeah, so actually, it wasn't a number I had in mind at all. In fact, my original plan was to bootstrap the company. And so my original idea was actually I would stay in SoftBank until April and take the bonus check and use the bonus check as money to start the company. And obviously, that would be a much smaller amount than 500K, right? But what I was thinking at the time was, in general, bootstrap businesses tend to make better decisions in the early stages anyway. And so I was actually very worried about the fact that as a non-technical founder, I would end up defaulting to hiring people to solve the problem, right? And often, even as an investor / operator before, that was most often how early stage startups start making mistakes. Right? You start hiring too much, you start defaulting to having an engineer solve your problems, and actually you're not really digging into product market fit. And so I wasn't even planning really to raise. I was very lucky that Flash Ventures, who are our first investor, they actually found me really weirdly, but they basically they invested in a friend of mine, and my friend sort of told me, hey, they're an interesting fund, you should talk to them. And I was like, I'm not really raising, I haven't even decided whether I want to leave SoftBank and do this and all that kind of stuff. And they're like, just talk to them. And so I talked to Flash, and they move incredibly quickly. And so I think we went from the first conversation to term sheet in something like 2 weeks. So it was like incredibly
Wow.
fast. And so by that point, and this was a 500K investment at the time, so it was the first bit of it. And so they, it got to a point where I was going, okay, we've got this 500 check on the table. Do I just take it and go start building this thing, or do I wait another 6 months in SoftBank, keep working, and figure things out? And I think just got to a point where I was like, okay, I just actually want to build now, and just make let's just go do it. And so I took the money, and then 2 months later, we had built this sort of initial team, and the core is basically my co-founder and I, and one other engineer. And it became quite clear also that we were validating the concept quite quickly, and there were lots of pre-launch user interest. So at that point, I think we had around 780 or so people who signed up for this sort of pre-launch waitlist. And these were all super highly qualified people as well to become creators on the platform. So we had people like, the CEO of Central America and Google, the managing director of content at YouTube, all these people who I actually didn't really know before I started the business. And so we started feeling like there was real momentum. And at this point, Flash introduced us to Global Founders Capital, and GFC were like, "Hey, look, we'll give you another $1 million. Let's keep going, and let's really double down." And so in many ways, we got extremely lucky in this early fundraising process, it was not at all what I was planning. And in many ways, the amounts were also not what we were asking. So we never went to them and said we want 1.5 billion, and so on and so forth. It was really more that the funds were driving how much we would do. And so that was the early stage.
No, wow. Like I think many founders are quite modest in the sense that oh, we got lucky, and it's an answer we get really often, right? Okay, like when you're talking such big numbers, right? They're like, yeah, we were aiming at this small little number, but our investor said that okay, no, this much is good for like your 2-year runway or whatever. But I think that it still has to do with the fact that they believed in the product, right? They believed in the team, and that's why that number was there. But I think something that you mentioned, which is really interesting, is that when you have a non-technical founder, one, it's quite important for early stage startups to like be able to easily pivot with the dynamic market that they're in, especially understanding the needs and different directions that it can go in. And especially if you're a non-technical founder, right? You said you default to your team answering the questions or finding the solutions, right? So can you like delve into that a little more? How can someone avoid that trap, or even identify that they're in that trap?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think it's there's a mentality piece, and then there's a practical decision making. So the mentality actually starts from something I mentioned earlier, which is this problem solution passion problem. So I think what often happens is a founder starts a business thinking that they have enormous passion in this solution. So you often hear this even in general conversation where people are like, I have this interesting idea, right? I have this thing I want to build and all that kind of stuff. And so they get really, really attached to the solution. Now this solution may or may not be really attached to some unique insight about the market either, right? So often like, entrepreneurs start theorizing about a problem that they may not even have experienced themselves. And then they get to a point where they go, oh, I've cracked it. I've got this like super creative new solution, doesn't exist in the market. That's what I'm going to build. This mentality is incredibly dangerous. Partly because without a unique insight in the market, something that no one else knows in the market, it's very unlikely your solution is truly defensible. Partly because being attached to a solution means that you're really resistant to iteration and pivoting. And partly because also business people in particular, non-technical founders in particular, are incredibly good at theorizing and persuading people of their theories. And so the result of this is that they go into this cycle of self-delusion. Right? They start explaining to the team validates them because the team's like, oh, he's so persuasive, it kind of makes sense, right? So you all start jumping off this bridge, basically, and you start going, oh God, it's never gonna work. So So I think it starts with the mentality at the beginning. It's basically that you need to launch your passion and root it really strongly in the problem that you're trying to solve. And go really deep in the consumer and their pain points and like what are they actually experiencing that's so problematic, and why are you so passionate about trying to help them solve that problem, regardless of what that solution will end up being. And then, of course, doing enough of the sort of user interviews or deep understanding of the problem yourself and all kinds of stuff to get to a unique insight that the market doesn't see. So that, I think, is the first most important thing, and especially for non-technical founders, it's critical to have that mentality switch at the beginning, so that you're open to pivoting and you're open to building things that are perhaps not exactly what you had in mind. The second piece is more pragmatic decision making, and I think part of it roots from that mentality, right? So if you think you have this grand product in your head, what you end up doing is you hire tons of people to build that grand product, and what will end up happening is you have a beautiful product that no one uses. So that's quite terrifying. But also it's basically defaulting to literally the simplest possible way you could do something. And that actually takes a lot of aggressive thinking and sort of and aggressive parameters for the team. So to give you an example, there's this app that basically does shopping recommendations. I actually forgot the name, so I would love to give the name, but I forgot about it. It's an A16Z backed shopping recommendations platform. And it's, AI based, and you get all these like super personalized recommendations. You see what your friends are buying, and then you could they use your friends' like personal behavior to guess yours, by stuff like that. Now, when you look at this product, you kind of think, oh, the MVP must be really complicated. Like, surely you need to find a way to build some recommendation algorithm for shopping and all kind of stuff, right? And so when you think of that, when you think backwards from that grand product, you go, oh my god, this is going to be really, really hard to build an MVP for. And what often happens is that these, especially non-technical founders, then go, consumers won't really understand the product until they see the whole thing, right? And so they start building the whole thing, right? And that just destroys the whole process. Instead, the MVP of this product was actually a Google Sheet. It was a Google Sheet where the founder was actually trying to buy baby products, and he shared the Google Sheet with other parents that he knew, and he put in all the baby products that he bought. And then he had another set of columns that basically went, friend 1, friend 2, friend 3, right? And it just went, hey, did you buy the same thing? Right? And if you didn't buy the same thing, what was the other thing you bought, right? And so the list kept growing. Then what happened was his friends started sharing with the other friends, right? And so those friends started adding to the list, and so this became this gigantic spreadsheet on baby products. Right? And you see these parents going, oh my god, this other parent bought this thing, this looks pretty good, I should buy that too. And so you start seeing this grow up. Now, what he's done there is he's captured the essence of what the product's actually trying to do, which is that you're actually looking for the product that is validated by people that you trust. Right? Like that's really at the core of it, and you don't actually need this grand product to solve it. But if you have the grand product, it gets even better, right? And so it's basically this distillation process that needs to be incredibly disciplined. And even, I think this is one of the reflections I've had in the last year and a half, is that I wasn't very disciplined about this, and now we are, eating the cost of that, right? and so we're trying to sort of, go back to that discipline too. But it is something that I think non-technical founders need to always keep in mind. It starts with mentality, and then it goes into that disciplined decision making that stems from it.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of being attached to the problem rather than the solution. I think it's important, and it's a good reminder for people to remember why they started something and try and get a solution for the original problem rather than like focusing just on the solution. So was the mana that you initially thought of the same as what it is now, or how has it changed and pivoted over the last year and a half?
Yeah, there's been enormous pivots. When I first came up with the solution, it was actually fairly complicated. So we looked at it and we're like, oh, people struggle to access the right advice and all that stuff. And so we started going, okay, which is the market where we could have the most immediate takeoff? Oh, let's do K-12 tutoring, right? So we went into K-12, and then we built this, I kid you not, AI homework answering machine. That then connects you to a tutor afterwards. So we had this Q&A thing where we actually begged Greg Brockman for access to GPT-3. So it was still in closed beta at the time. And we sent this email to Greg Brockman. There was a cold email, and I sent it 2 baby photos, which is my baby photo, my co-founder's baby photo. And I was like, please, give us access to GPT-3. And he did. He sent us access. So we trained GPT-3 to answer A-level questions. And it actually came up with pretty decent answers. And then we basically create an interface where the user can basically ask a question and it gives you an answer. And then if you're not satisfied with the answer, you can connect with a tutor to answer your question. This all sounds great, right? It all broke when we actually got to real users. Right? So first of all, like obviously, if you rely on some, really quite untested NLP model to start answering questions, you start hitting all kinds of edge cases that go really wrong, right? So imagining, a kid trying to ask some question related to Adolf Hitler in a history exam, and then seeing this incredible right wing spiel that comes out, it's like, oh god, it's not going to work. And then also we had this fundamental problem where the real paying customer were the parents, but then the user was the student. And so we're optimizing everything for the student's convenience, but we forgot that every time they need the payment, they're going back to the parent. And so we have this constant tussle where the parents and the students were arguing over whether they should pay for this thing or not. And so it became really difficult to monetize and really difficult to see how that process was going to work. And so after, I think, around 3 or 4 months, we basically pivoted away from that idea. And we started realizing that actually students cared more about non-academic stuff and actually things that they long-term want to do. So students asking us, how do I become a hardware designer? Or I actually want to work in fashion long-term. What do I need to do in A-levels to do that, right? And it's all very fascinating questions. And so we started thinking actually that extended market might be quite interesting. And so then we built that sort of initial Mana product that was more public, which is this sort of one-to-one calls scheduling that came out. But then we had another massive problem, which is that I think we had 1,300 people by the time we launched who were creators. So 1,300 creators come on the platform, which was amazing. And by the second month we had 700. By the third month we had 800, and then it was fluctuating, and then it was going down and down and down. Right? And so we're going, okay, this is not going to work. But what's going on there was that these individuals who were amazingly credentialed, worked in top tier companies, all kind of stuff, they had no following. And so when they offer this, they might, put out a LinkedIn post at the beginning, and it sort of drives a spike in demand. But they're not going to do it every day. Right? They don't really care about it enough to do it constantly. And so you get this continual decline in users. And so then we had the third pivot, which was, okay, we need some influencers who actually have following, but then we don't want the sort of general influencers with no substance. So let's actually get influencers who are teaching skills to join the platform. And in order to get them, we had to build them some basic biolink functionality, just like Linktree, so that they would use us as their biolink, and that gives us an audience immediately from their existing traffic, and then give them monetization built into that biolink as well. So that drove the first real growth curve for Mana. It went from, I think, around 600 users by the time we launched that feature in August and September 2021, all the way to 54,000 monthly active users in the space around 6 months. And so it grew really, really quickly. And so then we started realizing, okay, this is probably working. But then we had another big problem. So we did all this, and this is the final pivot before I close the question off. But basically, we realized that we had all these users, but they weren't buying anything, right? So they would come back every day, they'll be really active and all kind of stuff, but they weren't buying anything. And when they transacted, they always transacted for free. So they would, go for free calls and free meetings and free content, all kind of stuff. And we realized that, of course, they are on social media most of the time, and they're going through their TikTok, they see a bio link, they click in. And what they're interested really is more in content consumption. They're not trying to buy anything, right? So, and that action of buying is like super high friction. And so we had to figure out a way to make this purchasing behavior more seamless. And so we ended up designing our mobile app, which only recently launched in sort of May 2022. And it basically tries to blend this TikTok for learning style personal feed, where you still see a lot of interesting free content that captures your attention. And then when you really like a creator, you dive deeper with one-to-ones and one-to-many live streams and things that you can actually buy from that user. I don't think we've cracked this user journey. It's something that we're working really hard on to try to figure out, and what's the right format to make it work. But as you can see, we have changed I don't know how many times in this process to try to pivot to the right answer.
Yeah, it's amazing to see the difference from where you started and where you're now, and like the entire journey so far. Like it's been a massive change throughout, and like how y'all are continuously iterating to all the problems that keep coming. Yeah, and it's gonna be interesting to see like where you are in like a year's time, and like how much more you've developed the product. But I think, like as you said, that your problem has remained the same. It's just the solutions have kept changing. So it's nice to see that, I guess, in practice of how that looks like. In terms of going back to the technical and non-technical founder, and given that you were the non-technical founder, how did you meet your co-founder Bobby Dang, who was the technical founder?
Yeah, it was very serendipitous actually. So I didn't know Bobby before, and I was originally actually going to start the company with another very good friend of mine, but then he was moving countries at the time. So this was midway through COVID, and he was like, "I can't take being locked down in London anymore. I'm going to move to like America and all that kind of stuff." Right. So I was looking at that going, "Okay, it'll be really really difficult to build a company together when we're 8 hours apart and so on." And so as much as I would have loved to do it, it probably wasn't going to work. And so I ended up starting the company myself, and we had just raised the first round. So Flash had just put in the initial tranche of money. And so then what happened was I started writing on LinkedIn about what we were trying to do, and it wasn't about the solution at all. It was more about the problems in learning and education and how we want to change it, stuff like that. So Bobby reached out on LinkedIn. We started chatting, and we realized we lived 10 minutes away from each other. And so we went down
Oh,
to this.
wow.
Yeah, exactly. It's like super serendipitous, and the street between us is called the Bermondsey Beer Mile. So it's a bunch of craft breweries in the same street. And so we went down
Amazing.
to the Bermondsey Beer Mile. We had a couple of drinks. I thought it was going to be an hour. It turned into this 6 or 7 hour conversation. Just kept going and going and going. We
Wow.
realized that we had the shared passion for the problem, but our perspectives on the solution were actually quite different. And so that the way we sort of debated the solution, the way we constructed and reconstructed the ideas, I felt like we were pushing further and further and further to the right answer, right? And so I felt like, oh, he might be the right person. And for context, I was talking to a ton of different people at the time. So I was talking to I think at one point I met the guy who made the app for Mr. Bean. Like he literally turned the TV show into an app for the TV producers, and stuff like that. And it was incredible. Like met a lot of very interesting people. But in the end, I think Bobby and I had extremely strong chemistry from the start, and it became quite clear that he was probably the right person to go to build this. So yeah,
No,
that's how it.
I love the fact that you all had like, let's say, different perspectives to the solution, because, again, about the fact that when there's everyone's in a room and like even if everyone's super passionate, everyone understands the industry super well and everything, you can have all of that, but you can still have a certain air of people just building on top of that one core idea, but that core idea itself might be wrong, right? So that's why anytime we do like team huddles, we always appoint someone in the room has to choose to be devil's advocate, and their only like role for that particular meeting is to shoot down every idea that's coming out, right? In like every way possible, just to like get the sort of back and forth, which is quite cool that you all had that so early on, that 6 to 7 hour
That's a great
conversation.
idea. I'm probably going to steal that for a few other meetings. Just see that we can just have a devil's advocate who does that. Well, like one of the things we do too, especially for ideation meetings, is that we kind of force everyone to write before the meeting, and like on a few
Yeah.
specific questions. And that causes people one to think a lot more. Like it's almost the classic sort of Amazon memo type thing, where you
Yeah.
just have to go through the thinking process, but also that you separate out the individual ideas, so that when you get into the room, you actually already have some constructed concept of what you really think, so that you can really have that clash. And it avoids a lot of that groupthink that starts happening when you just go straight into discussion. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
No, I think another thing that really brings out, right, is when you have different levels of, let's say, seniority in your team, right? Someone with 5 years of experience versus someone with 1 year of experience, right? As soon as you get into the meeting, the person with 5 years of experience, if they speak first, the person with 1 year of experience, if they had a different idea, might not necessarily say it, right? Because they're like, okay, I have only 1 year of experience. He or she has five. So why would my idea be better?
Yeah.
But if
right.
they've written it down, if they put that effort in, they might still offer it up as oh, that's great, but there's also this kind of thing. So that's another thing that brings out. So it's good. I'll steal that from you then. So we'll call it even.
Excellent. Sounds great. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to a game. Let's play red flags. We're gonna give you three situations, and in each situation, there will be two good points and one red flag. We have adapted these situations for mana, and then you can choose the situation you would rather be in. Some of it is made up, some of it is some of the achievements y'all have had so far. It's just so that you can have like more attachment to these situations. So, situation one, mana is the number one product of the day on Product Hunt. Mana raises 15 million pounds in its seed round, but Mana's co-founder Bobby quits. Situation two, Mana is selected by Sifted as top 15 startups shaping the future of e-commerce and the creator economy. Mana has the top 10,000 creators and professionals of the world on its platform. But there is a massive bug on the Mana app 1 week before the public launch. Situation 3, Mana has impacted and changed the lives of 1 million people by giving access to find relatable people, curated knowledge, and communities of similar passion. Mana has improved the relationship people have with social media to be a more positive and productive one, but Mana only becomes profit making after 12 years.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. I think it's actually a pretty easy choice. I think it's option three. It's situation three. And I think it's a mix of two things. One is that the milestones in that situation are very clearly oriented around the impact instead of like fake milestones. So in my head, like how much money you raise at the early stages is basically a fake milestone. How many creators you have is an interesting milestone, but it doesn't mean anything until you can actually impact people. And so third one's really the only one that has like a powerful impact on the customers and the users. And the second is that I do want to create a profitable company, but if someone's going to fund us over a 12-year period to like achieve that impact before you get profitable, great. Yeah. So it's probably situation three.
Okay, yeah. It's interesting to like put people in situations like this because it brings out where like the motivation and priority of the company lies, and I think that comes through when you're put in a situation where there's certain things that go well, but then there is something that isn't going well as well, and that like kind of gives a more realistic approach on how things go. I did expect you leaning towards the impact one, but yeah, obviously I wanted to see what your thoughts were. Okay, so we have another challenge for you, and to get into this, we want to understand Mana's challenges. We play two lies and one truth. The idea is that you give us three statements from which one explains the truth and two are lies and false statements. And then Anuj and I have to guess the correct one.
Ooh, okay. And it has to be about Mana as a company, right? Like it's okay. Then I would think
Or
about it.
like your journey with mana, something y'all experienced, anything.
Yeah, got it. This is an interesting one. Okay, give me a second to think about it. Okay, all right. I got it. I think I got it. Okay. So these are the three statements, and two lies, one truth, right? Two lies, one truth.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So the first one is that Mana has had applications from over 50 porn stars. Okay. Second one is Mana has had applications to be a creator, and these are all applications to be a creator on the platform. Mana has had applications from a Republican congressman in the US. Right? And the third one is Mana has had applications from two Conservative Party leadership contenders.
Wow.
Wow. That is like three such. I mean, it's exactly the way the game is meant to be played. So like, kudos on that. Um, all right.
I need to find three equally implausible statements. So that'll be a surprise no matter which one is actually the truth. But yeah.
All right.
Anuj, is there anything you're leaning towards?
Okay, I'm gonna go for the lie is the 50 pawn stars. I think it'll probably be around 2025, not 50.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say the Pawn Stars, I would say less than 50 for sure. Just because, yeah, given that it's like an educational platform, I don't know why they would want to apply to be creators. So I would say less than 50.
Got it. And it's two lies and one truth, right? So you need to guess the other lie as well.
Um,
I'm gonna say
the
the second one
Republican.
that you said. Yeah.
The Republican congressman. Okay, cool. All right, your consensus, right? Republican congressman
Yes.
is the second one.
Yes.
Cool. All right, the truth is actually the Republican congressman.
Oh wow.
We actually have had a Republican congressman apply to be creator, which is absolutely crazy.
Were
Um,
they accepted?
the Conservative Party leadership contender. No, he was not accepted. He spewed some pretty crazy Breitbart stuff. So that's probably, yeah, he's probably not right for the platform. And in general, I think we don't really take political influencers. But yeah, the Conservative Party one is just a flat out untruth. Like it's not true. The porn star one is actually, you guys got it pretty right. Like we haven't had 50, but we've had quite a few, like maybe 20 plus. And it actually all happened. It started happening right after the OnlyFans announcement that they were going to ban porn. So when OnlyFans said they were going to stop doing porn, basically all these porn stars needed an alternate platform to make money, and so they started looking on the internet, and we came up with the SEO, and they started applying. So yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. I mean, to actually I mean, I'm just trying to think, what was the Republican congressman's thought process, right, while wanting to apply, right? Like, what was he or she thinking? Um,
Yeah, I still wonder about that actually. I'm not really sure. I think he's like it seemed like he was in some kind of early stage campaigning. That's my understanding. But but I have no idea why he applied.
yeah.
Yeah, we just saw that and went, oh, okay, cool.
But cool. Again, like kudos to you for playing this game. Probably the best we've ever had. And now I think so this last game is rapid fire, so self-explanatory. 2 to 3 seconds to answer each question, and 1 to 3 word answer kind of vibe. So let's start. First question: how many all-nighters did you pull in your first year of Mana?
At least 10.
Okay, not bad. What's the scrappiest thing that you've ever done to build your business?
Talking to as many 13-year-olds as possible on Reddit, which is kind of weird. This makes me sound very odd.
Okay, so that we promise to never use that answer out of context. We'll always give context.
Great.
Did you ever question whether it was worth it?
No.
Amazing. One word to describe your emotion when you first raised money.
Actually, nervousness. I wasn't sure whether money was actually going to accelerate us, and I wasn't sure that I was going to use the money the right way.
Oh, nice. Very interesting answer. What is the craziest story you've ever had from building the business?
Oh. I mean, we've covered like 3 of the scenarios just now. So I think my favorite moment was still when OnlyFans announced they were banning porn, and we suddenly got this influx of porn star applications. And we had no idea what was driving it until we started reading the news and going, it must be OnlyFans.
Yeah.
That was great.
Okay, awesome. What is the weirdest place from where you have worked?
What was the weirdest place, sorry?
What is the weirdest place from where you've worked? The weirdest setting from where you have worked?
In a hospital. Like, it's kind of weird. Like, my girlfriend got hospitalized a bit for a moment, and so I ended up working on her lap in the hospital bed, and the NHS hospital was very packed at the time, so they created a makeshift room that was basically in the stairwell. So I found myself in this sort of backup staircase hospital bed, working while there and taking calls on her
my
lap.
God.
It was kind of crazy.
Okay, what is the best oh crap moment you've ever had?
Oh crap moment, is what you said. And this is in life in general, or is it more?
Yeah.
Oh crap moment. I think it's when I rejected all my university offers, and I finally realized I delayed it long enough that I really had to tell my parents. I finally realized, oh god, we're gonna end up flying to London, and they'll realize I'm not going to university. Like that's pretty bad.
Okay. Books or podcasts?
Podcasts.
iPad or notebook?
iPad.
Are you a morning person or a night person?
Night.
And what's your favorite social media platform?
Ooh. I kind of hate most of them now, but it's probably a mixture of LinkedIn and Twitter.
LinkedIn and Twitter. Yeah, I think a lot of people we're speaking to nowadays are coming to that conclusion. Let's say, but I will caveat it with this: they love Instagram to consume content, right? But their
Right.
headspace is really there when they're on LinkedIn and Twitter. That's the kind of
Yeah.
what I get about it, right? Like people don't like Instagram, but they use Instagram for an hour a day or something, right? But they love Twitter
That's
and
right.
LinkedIn. I think that's what's
Mm.
interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah. It's like the one's solving a real utility and the other is solving boredom, and both are equally powerful instincts in our heads, but
yeah,
it triggers very different use cases. Yeah, that's super interesting. Hmm.
cool. That concludes the rapid fire. I'll lead off to Janvi for the last little segment that we have.
So, we generally conclude the podcast by asking our guest to ask the next guest a question. Our previous guest asked,
What's their secret to success? Would love to know about that.
I think it's authentic motivation. I think everything that drives me is something that I consider to be a proper life mission in a way. Like it's not just a commercial outcome or some kind of utility that I'm trying to gun for. Like the business I'm building, and I don't think I can build any other business, to be honest. Like I would probably, if I try to build a B2B fintech SaaS company, I would probably like give up within the first 3 months. So it's that authentic motivation, and it turns into the ability to motivate other people. It turns into the ability to persuade investors, persuade customers, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think it probably starts from there.
yeah, I guess I can attest to like your motivation. I think you've been a great support throughout. I remember back at university, I remember coming to you for advice when it came to like career and stuff like that. And then later, when we started Reshape Co, you helped us with the training module for all our consultants. Um, so you've always been there supporting people, and like it's very easy to come to you for advice, and I really want to thank you for that. And like sometimes, yeah, it's surprising to see where you get like all that motivation
Oh well,
from, especially when you're so busy on a regular basis.
And honestly, thank you for an amazing, like last hour, right? We've had, I think, so much fun, discussing everything with you. And at the risk of like constantly validating you, it was just literally
very dangerous for founder.
perfectly. Yeah, it was awesome. And thank you so much for joining us. We had an absolute blast.
Thank you for having me.